The war had already been going on for 7 years. Not Earth's war, no. This one was bigger. It was a galaxy-wide nightmare fought across hundreds of systems between two ancient superpowers, the Cavor Dominion and the Threxian Fold. Billions of lives lost, planets burned, civilizations reduced to dust. And the humans? They weren't even in the fight, not yet. Humanity had only recently cracked faster-than-light travel. They were late to the Galactic Party, still busy trying to map star charts and figure out what the hell a quantum gravity sling even was. Compared to the Cavor and the Threxians, races that had been spacefaring for over 10,000 years, humans were infants, primitive even. A species known more for their unpredictability than any real tactical value. But that changed fast, real fast. It started when the Cavor, desperate and losing ground, sent out a wide-frequency distress call. Their fleet had just been annihilated in Sector 9X9. Hundreds of ships gone, their generals dead. The Threxians were marching straight for the Cavor core worlds, and no one could stop them. No one, until Earth answered. Most of the Cavor thought it was a joke. Humans were untested. Their military numbers were laughable. Their ships were clunky. Their weapons were outdated by about 3,000 years. But they said they'd help. Said they had a few ships that could be deployed. Tactical support, they called it. No one expected anything from them. The Cavor didn't even send a formal ambassador, just a junior diplomat and a rundown hangar on a backwater moon for the meeting. But the humans didn't seem to care. They showed up smiling, relaxed, a dozen officers in sharp black uniforms, all with that strange human confidence. Like they were walking into a game, not a war, and leading them was a man named Captain Ray Holloway. The Cavor junior diplomat, a blue-scaled creature named Voruk, tried to keep things polite. "We thank you for your willingness to participate, but you must understand the situation is extremely dire." Holloway just shrugged. "Dire's what we do best." Voruk blinked all 4 eyes. "We are not sure your current technology can even withstand a single Threxian assault. Are you sure your people are ready?" Ray grinned. "We brought beer and nukes. That usually covers it." The humans deployed 5 ships. 5. Against a Threxian war caravan of over 70 destroyers. The math didn't make sense. The Cavor generals were furious. They wanted to withdraw support immediately. But the humans were already en route to the hot zone before anyone could stop them. No one expected them to survive. In fact, many of the Cavor secretly thought it would be better if the Threxians wiped them out quickly. At least then they wouldn't be a political embarrassment. But the battle in the Jalon belt rewrote everything. The Threxians arrived with overwhelming force. Their ships were sleek, jagged, and black as void. Plasma beams stretched miles through space, lighting up the belt in bright arcs of destruction. And then, the humans struck. They didn't use formation patterns. They didn't stick to traditional tactics. Their ships moved erratically, unpredictably, ducking behind asteroids, using the debris as shields. They jammed communication signals with old-world radio frequencies. They hacked Threxian targeting systems by flooding them with raw Earth music, blasting metal, rock, jazz through deep space channels. Then came the surprise. One human ship broke through the front line, looking like it had been damaged. The Threxians closed in, hungry for the kill. That's when the ship detonated, not with a nuke, but with a graviton imploder. A device no one knew humans even had. The implosion dragged 10 Threxian ships into a compressed singularity. Gone. Just like that. The battle turned in 10 minutes. When it was over, the Cavor watched from orbit as the 5 human ships drifted calmly through the wreckage of the Threxian fleet. They hadn't just survived. They'd won. The galaxy started paying attention. And back on Earth, Captain Holloway lit a cigar, looked at the comm feed, and said, "So, when's the next round?" The aftermath of the Jalon Belt skirmish sent shockwaves through every military command in the known galaxy. Cavor High Command scrambled to update their databases. Every analyst, every tactician, every AI simulation was rerun. Same results. Those 5 human ships should have been vaporized. But they weren't. Instead, they'd shredded a far superior Threxian force, using tactics that didn't make sense, weapons no one thought they had, and, perhaps most disturbing of all, a level of improvisation that bordered on madness. Back on the Cavor capital world, the grand strategist Morka Yel, a war veteran with 800 years of service, stood in stunned silence as the hollow feed played the battle footage over and over again. The human ships weaved in and out of Threxian fire, using physics-defying maneuvers, diving into gravity wells, slingshotting around asteroids like lunatics. "They fly like they have no fear of death," he muttered. "They don't," said a voice from behind. It was Voruk, the junior diplomat who had first spoken to the humans. "They call it crazy back on Earth. We call it suicidal. But it works." Morkael turned to him, his 4 eyes narrowed. "Bring me this Captain Holloway." Meanwhile, aboard the UNS Black Rain, Captain Ray Holloway was already in deep conversation with his crew. They weren't celebrating. There were no parades, no grand speeches, just a quiet debriefing in the ship's galley, a few beers, and the hum of cooling systems. "All right, let's break it down," Holloway said, running a hand through his short, graying hair. "What worked, what didn't?" Lieutenant Vargas leaned forward. "The graviton imploder took out 10 ships, but we lost the Eclipse. That tech's a one-time deal, Captain. We don't have another." "I know," Holloway said. "Still worth it. What about comms?" "We screwed their frequencies good," said Tech Officer Lee. "Used old Earth radio waves to throw off their AI eye-parsing systems. Classic tactic. They didn't even know how to process a saxophone solo." Ray chuckled. "Jazz wins wars. Who knew?" They all laughed quietly, but beneath the humor was something else, a storm building. Because they all knew this wasn't over. The Threxians weren't going to let this humiliation go unanswered. No empire that big ever did. As expected, less than 48 standard hours later, a formal Cavor envoy arrived. Not the junior diplomat this time. A full delegation, headed by none other than Grand Strategist Morka Yel himself. The old warrior stepped aboard the Black Rain flanked by guards and aides, his eyes scanning every detail of the human warship like a predator assessing a new species. Ray met him at the docking bay, wearing his standard black field uniform and a cocky smile. "Welcome aboard," he said, holding out a hand. Morka Yel didn't take it. "Humans," he said, voice dry and almost disgusted. "You break every rule of warfare we've followed for millennia." Ray didn't flinch. "Good. That's the only reason we're still alive." They walked together down the corridor, the tension almost physical between them. "You are unpredictable," Morka Yel said. "Unstable, reckless." "And that's exactly what makes us valuable," Ray replied. "Your enemies don't know how to fight us because you don't know how to fight us." Morka Yel stopped walking. "You won one battle. Do not confuse that with victory." Ray turned, looked the alien dead in the eyes. "You're not asking us for help anymore, are you? You're here because you need us. Because if you don't have us on your side, this whole war is going to end with your people kneeling to Threxian overlords." Silence. Finally, Morka Yel nodded once, a slow, painful gesture. "You will have resources, command access, full operational integration. But know this. If you ever turn your tactics on us, if you ever betray the Cavor—" "We won't," Ray interrupted. "But if we did, you wouldn't see it coming." The old general didn't respond. He just walked away. Back in the command deck, Ray looked over the tactical maps. Dozens of red zones flickered across the galaxy. The war was far from over. But something had changed now, something fundamental. Humans weren't outsiders anymore. They were game changers, and both sides knew it. "We just became the wild card," Vargas said, watching the map light up with new orders from the Cavor. Ray nodded. "Let's make sure they never forget why humans don't play by the rules." The Cavor War Council had never moved this fast before. Within days, new directives were issued. Human commanders were being embedded across multiple fleets, sometimes replacing decades-old military protocols with wild, unpredictable strategies. The traditionalists hated it, but they had no choice. The Threxians had begun to accelerate their push, emboldened by how weak the Dominion had become. Captain Ray Holloway and his crew weren't just a curiosity anymore, they were a necessity. Orders came in. Operation Black Gale, a coordinated strike deep inside Threxian-occupied space. The target, a manufacturing moon called Core Vesh, known for churning out thousands of Threxian battle drones every week. The Cavor had tried to disable it 5 times. They lost hundreds of ships each attempt. Now it was the humans' turn. The plan was simple, at least on paper. Human Squadron would breach Threxian perimeter defenses using distraction and cloaked warp hops, while Cavor long-range ships hammered from a distance. Once inside the perimeter, human commandos would land on Core Vesh, sabotage the drone factory core, and extract before detonation. The Cavor generals predicted a 2% survival chance. Ray Holloway just laughed when he read the numbers. "Guess we'll make history then." The UNS Black Rain, accompanied by 4 other human warships, launched at 0500 Galactic Standard. Inside the cramped strike room, Ray stood before his team. 12 men and women, each hand-picked from Earth's deadliest units. No aliens, no politics, just pure human instinct. "You've read the mission brief. You've seen the stats," Ray said, his tone low but calm. "I won't lie to you. This mission is a death wish. But if we pull it off, we shut down one of the biggest Threxian threats in this war. We hit them where it hurts." One of the soldiers, a tall woman with burn scars across her left cheek, raised her hand lazily. "So what happens if we don't make it?" Ray grinned. "Then we die loud enough to make 'em think twice next time." Everyone chuckled, not because it was funny, but because they all knew that was the truth. Earth had always done things differently. They didn't believe in dying quietly. The approach to Core Vesh was pure chaos. Threxian scanner drones covered the area like a cloud of hornets. Ray ordered all ships to shut off active emissions and coast through with full stealth, silent engines, no signals, no light. 3 human ships were hit before even reaching the orbit line. No screams. Just red markers blinking out on Ray's HUD. He clenched his jaw but didn't blink. "Keep going." Once they broke into low orbit, the Threxians unleashed hell. Swarms of automated cannons erupted from the moon's surface, painting the black of space with a storm of orange and blue. "Launch the pods!" Ray barked. The human strike team jettisoned in drop pods, metal coffins hurtling through plasma fire at supersonic speeds. Most didn't make it. 2 pods were vaporized mid-air. Another lost control and crashed into a communications tower. The rest? They hit dirt. Hard. Ray's pod slammed into the rocky surface, tearing through steel layers of Core Vesh's outer hull. He unstrapped fast, heart pounding, ears ringing. "Squad, check in!" he yelled through comms. Static. Then a voice. Vargas. "I'm in. West sector. Took a hit. Legs busted, but I'm moving." Another voice. Corporal Jules. "I got eyes on the core tunnel. 3 clicks out." They were scattered, but alive. "Rally at Vector 6, Ray ordered. We're blowing this place to hell." The Threxians came fast, faster than expected. 8-legged drone guards emerged from the dust, crawling across walls and ceilings like metallic spiders. One of them dropped down in front of Ray, eyes glowing red, claws twitching. He emptied his rifle into its skull, then kept running. By the time they reached the core entrance, they were down to 6. Bloodied, burned, but unbroken, they planted the charges, synchronized detonation, and began the escape run. Every hallway was a maze of fire and shrapnel. The Threxians weren't just defending, they were panicking. For the first time, it felt like fear. Ray was the last one to the evac point. He dragged Vargas over his shoulder, her leg hanging limp and bleeding. The extraction shuttle hovered 20 meters above a collapsing platform, shield barely holding. Ray leaped. They made it. Barely. The factory exploded behind them, sending a shockwave that cracked the moon's crust and lit the void with fire. Silence in the shuttle. Then Vargas, blood on her face, whispered, "We just crippled their entire drone production line." Ray looked back at the burning moon. "Yeah," he said, "and we're just getting started." The return to Cavor space was nothing like what Ray expected. There was no celebration, no cheering crowds, no parade, just silence and a line of stern-looking alien officials waiting at the docking bay. The black rain landed with its hull scorched, engines coughing black smoke, and half its lights flickering from overload. Ray stepped out, limping slightly, his body aching from the shock of the blast. Vargas followed behind him on crutches, still bleeding through her bandages. The rest of the surviving crew looked like ghosts, tired, burned, hardened by something that went beyond pain. Standing at the front of the Cavor officials was strategist Morka Yell, arms crossed, expression unreadable. "You succeeded," he said, voice low. Ray didn't answer immediately. He looked past the alien's shoulder, at the cold faces of the high command. "We lost 4 ships. Dozens of soldiers. That moon was a meat grinder," he said. "But yeah, we succeeded." Morkael gave a nod, slow and deliberate. "The Threxians have not launched a counteroffensive. Their drone supply lines are in chaos. You did more in 2 days than we managed in 5 years." Ray arched a brow. "You don't sound happy about it." "We are not used to depending on outsiders," Morkael admitted. "Especially ones who fight like mad beasts." Ray smirked. Mad beasts get results. Later that night, Ray sat alone in his quarters. The lights were dim, and an old Earth jazz track played softly in the background. He stared at the hollow screen in front of him, footage of the core Vesh assault, slowed down and replayed over and over again. Each explosion, each scream on the comms, each life lost. They had won. But the cost was rising. A message pinged across the screen. "Priority transmission." He tapped to open it. A face flickered into view. A woman, dark-haired, sharp eyes, dressed in the sleek black of Earth's covert military wing. The badge on her collar read ISD, Intelligence and Strategic Division. "Captain Holloway," she said with a cold smile, "you've made quite an impression. Earth Command wants you to know they're paying attention." Ray leaned back in his chair. "That's supposed to scare me?" "Number just reminding you that not everyone's thrilled about our cozy little alliance with the Cavor. Some think you're getting too close." "Close?" Ray scoffed. "We're not friends. We're just useful." "Exactly," she said. "And when humans become too useful, they stop being underestimated. That's when we become targets." He didn't answer. She continued, voice low. "Word is, the Threxians are shifting tactics. They're starting to study human combat patterns. They're preparing for you. So the next time you walk into a battle, Captain, you might not catch them off guard." Ray shut off the screen. The warning came true faster than anyone thought. 2 weeks later, a Cavor outpost on the edge of the Zareth corridor was attacked. No warning, no chatter, just total silence and a burst of distorted signals. When scout ships arrived, they found the entire base gone, just a crater where the station used to be. And in that crater, burned into the rock, was a symbol no one had ever seen before. A crude human skull, wrapped in Threxian language. It wasn't just war anymore. It was personal. Ray stood in front of the Cavor War Council as they analyzed the image. "They're mocking us," Morkael said. Your kind." Ray stared at the symbol, jaw clenched. "No, they're warning us. They're saying they've figured us out." Another Cavor general hissed through sharp teeth. "This is retaliation. They want to lure you out, force a direct confrontation." Ray smiled, but there was no humor in it. "Then they'll get one." Back on the Black Rain, the crew gathered in the briefing room. The atmosphere was heavy. Half the seats were empty now, filled only by memories. Ray stood before them, a new mission forming in his head. One they hadn't authorized. One the Cavor wouldn't like. "The Threxians think they understand us now. They're expecting brute force, suicide missions, noise," he said, pacing. "But we're going to flip the script." Vargas raised an eyebrow. "What's the plan?" Ray stopped, eyes cold. "We take the fight straight to their throne world." The room went silent. "You're talking about a death sentence," Lee said. "That system's locked down with 10 defense grids and enough firepower to turn a planet inside out." Ray nodded. "Exactly. That's why they'll never see it coming." The Cavor High Command flat out refused the idea. "You cannot attack the Threxian throne world," Morkael barked, slamming a fist onto the war table. "It is suicide. It is madness." Ray stood across from him, arms folded, expression unreadable. He'd expected this reaction. "Suicide was flying 5 ships into 70 and winning," Ray replied. "Madness was bombing Core Vesh and getting out alive. This?" He leaned in, voice calm. "This is strategy, the kind they don't expect from humans anymore." Morkael's upper set of eyes narrowed, while his lower pair flicked rapidly. Cavor body language for stress. "We are allies. You cannot operate without coordination." Ray didn't blink. "Then coordinate faster." Back aboard the Black Rain, the mood was different. The crew was quiet, but determined. Nobody questioned Ray, not because they blindly trusted him, but because he'd dragged them through hell and back more than once. When he spoke, it wasn't with rank. It was with experience, with weight. He stood before them now, a 3-dimensional hollow of the Threxian throne world spinning slowly behind him. Vel Taraxis, a planet wrapped in planetary shields, surrounded by 6 moons, each one a fortified war platform. According to every known tactical model, it was impenetrable. Ray tapped the hollow. The image zoomed into a narrow gap in the outer defense ring, Node 12, a repair sector where shield protocols rotated every 90 seconds. A flaw, small and brief, but real. "We'll enter during the rotation gap. It's only open for 17 seconds, but it's enough." Lieutenant Lee looked up. "And once we're in?" Ray's eyes were steel. "We go quiet. We get to the surface. We plant a hyperfusion warhead right under their central command dome, and then we vanish." Vargas leaned back, shaking her head slowly. "You're betting our lives on a glitch in their system." Ray nodded. "Exactly, because no one else will." 2 days later, the mission began. No grand fleet, no armada, just 3 ships. Black Rain, carrying the infiltration team. UNS Harbinger, retrofitted for jamming and stealth support. UNS Remnant, a decoy ship rigged to emit false battle signatures and draw fire. The Remnant would jump in first, cause chaos, die loud. While the Threxians scrambled, the other two ships would sneak through the Node 12 gap, slingshot around the fourth moon, and descend to Vel Taraxis under cloak. Everyone on board knew this was a one-way mission. No rescue, no fallback. Ray gathered the infiltration team, only 9 now, veterans, survivors. Every one of them had seen things no human ever should. He looked them in the eyes. This isn't about Earth anymore. This is about every species that's been stepped on, enslaved, wiped out by the Threxians. We're not just striking back. We're sending a message. Humanity doesn't kneel. They didn't cheer. They didn't clap. They just nodded. The jump into Threxian space hit like a thunderclap. Immediately, the remnant began its suicide run, blasting false signals and releasing decoy drones like confetti. The Threxians bit hard. Within seconds, the entire orbital defense system lit up, focusing every gun on the screaming, chaotic mess of the decoy ship. Black Rain and Harbinger slid through Node 12's gap like whispers in a hurricane. The timing was razor thin. 12 seconds in, 3 to spare. Any later, and they'd be slag. Once inside, they slingshotted beneath Moon Ceta 4, barely avoiding automated turrets, before engaging atmospheric stealth and dropping straight toward the dark side of Vel Taraxis. The planet was a black, oily ocean of metal and fire. Massive towers pierced the clouds. Drone swarms moved like storm fronts. And at the center, glowing red with power, stood the Dome of Command, home to the Threxian Overmind. Ray stared at it through the viewing port, jaw tight. This ends tonight. They hit the ground hard. The landing site was a maintenance trench, 3 clicks from the dome, shielded by heat exhaust and electromagnetic interference. Perfect cover. The team moved like shadows, cloaked in grav suits that masked their biosignatures. Silent, invisible, deadly. Every Threxian they encountered was dispatched with brutal efficiency. Blades, not bullets. No sound. When they reached the base of the dome, Ray activated the fusion warhead, a compact, unstable core built by Earth's best scientists. One blast would vaporize half the capital, and more importantly, sever the central command link that gave orders to the Threxian war machine. He looked at Vargas. She was bleeding from the shoulder, but still standing tall. "Timer?" she asked. 4 minutes, Ray replied. "We get to extraction, or we go out with a bang." They turned to run. That's when the Threxians found them. They came like a wave of shadows. Dozens of Threxian enforcers, tall, spined monsters in obsidian armor, poured into the trench from every angle, clicking and hissing in their shrill, metallic tongue. Their eyes glowed like furnace coals, and in the dim red emergency light of the dome's underbelly, the humans looked like ants facing giants. Ray didn't blink. "Scatter and move," he barked. "Stick to the plan." The team broke formation, diving into cover, returning fire with suppressed rifles and micro-grenades. Even with the element of surprise gone, their training held. 2 Threxians dropped before the others could react. Lee and Corporal Dren moved right, flanking the rear. Vargas limped forward, teeth clenched, still firing. Ray stayed in the middle, shielding the warhead. It was live now. There was no turning back. The countdown ticked down. 3:46. "Go! I'll draw them," he shouted. "No chance," Vargas growled. "We started this together, we finish it the same way." Threxian gunfire ripped through the air, a high-pitched pulse that melted steel. One blast hit a wall behind Ray, throwing him to the ground. The wind rushed from his lungs. Another bolt skimmed his arm, burning flesh straight through to bone. He grunted, bit back a scream, and kept moving. Lee's voice crackled through the comms. "We've got movement to the west. Reinforcements incoming." "How many?" Ray snapped. "Too many." The fight turned desperate. The humans ducked behind piping and metal debris, shooting when they could, tossing explosives, trying to hold the Threxians back just long enough for the timer to run out. 254 Dren was the first to fall. A plasma blade tore through his chest as he tried to cover Lee's retreat. No time to mourn. Ray just grabbed his rifle and kept going. 217. The warhead was heavy, even with the grav sling. Ray's body screamed with every step, but he didn't stop. The extraction point was only a few hundred meters away, a vertical shaft that led to an old ventilation tunnel connected to the planet's undersea vents. It was their only way out. If they could reach it, Harbinger could snag them in low orbit before the blast. But the Threxians were closing in. By the time the team reached the shaft, only 4 were left: Ray, Vargas, Lee, and Sergeant Quill. His face burned, one eye gone, dragging his leg behind him. Quill looked up at the tunnel ladder. "I'll stay," he said. "Buy you a minute." Ray turned to argue, but Quill was already unstrapping his last charge. "You said it yourself, Captain. No quiet deaths." Ray met his eyes. No words, just a nod. Quill turned and ran toward the advancing Threxians, screaming like a madman. Plasma blasts lit up the darkness. And then, silence. 141 Ray heaved the warhead into the shaft. "Vargas, climb. You too, Lee." "What about you?" Lee shouted, voice cracking. "I'll rig the final seal. Make sure it goes clean." "No," Vargas said, staring at him. "You're not dying in this goddamn trench." Ray gave her a look, quiet, steady. "You know better. Someone's got to stay. Someone's got to make sure they don't disarm it." Vargas opened her mouth to protest, but the timer kept ticking. 129. "Go," he said. And for the first time, Vargas didn't argue. She just reached out, squeezed his hand once, then began to climb. Lee followed. Ray turned back toward the warhead, bloodied, shaking, but standing tall. A Threxian commander appeared from the smoke, a towering brute with 4 arms, each one wielding a different weapon. It stepped over the corpses of its own soldiers, snarling in its native tongue. Ray raised his rifle. Empty. Didn't matter. "Come on, you son of a bitch," he muttered. 106, the Threxian charged. Ray dove to the side, grabbing Quill's fallen blade from the dirt and jammed it into the creature's underarm as it lunged. It roared, grabbed him by the throat, slammed him into the wall. Bones cracked. Blood spilled. Ray didn't stop. He jammed the blade again, twisting it until the alien collapsed with a screech. Ray fell to his knees, coughing blood, head spinning. 037. He dragged himself to the warhead. Saw the control panel flashing. No errors. Everything in place. He looked up one last time at the shaft. No sign of Vargas or Lee. They'd made it. He smiled. 021. Then he turned back, sat against the wall, and pulled a crushed pack of cigarettes from his vest. The lighter barely worked. The flame danced once, twice, then lit. He took a slow drag. Let's see how gods bleed. At that exact moment, in orbit above Vel Taraxis, the UNS Harbinger picked up the signal. Detonation in 10, 9, 8. The planet lit up from the inside. First a pulse, then a shockwave. Then fire, a ring of it tearing upward, outward, through the command dome, through the crust, through everything. The Threxian capital was gone in seconds, their central intelligence severed. Their empire, blind, and Earth. Earth had just punched a hole straight through a galactic tyrant's heart. Vel Taraxis was gone. Not damaged, not crippled. Gone. The blast wave from the hyperfusion warhead cracked the planet's crust in half. Satellites were vaporized. Moons shifted orbit. The dome of command, the beating heart of the Threxian Empire, was reduced to molten debris scattered across the void like cosmic ashes. The shock wasn't just physical, it was psychological. For millennia, the Threxians had ruled through fear, through overwhelming force, through the illusion of invincibility, and in less than 5 minutes, that illusion was destroyed. By humans. News of the attack spread faster than light. Across Cavor space, across Allied sectors, even into neutral trade routes and outlaw systems, the message was the same. Humanity had done the impossible. Some called it madness, some called it genius. But everyone understood one thing now. Earth wasn't just another primitive species trying to catch up. They were something new, something terrifying. And the Threxians, they felt it. For the first time in recorded galactic history, Threxian fleets stalled. Orders went unanswered. Outposts went dark. Entire battalions defected or fled into uncharted space. The Overmind was dead, or at least cut off, and their AI network collapsed under its own weight. It was chaos, and in chaos, humans thrived. The UNS Harbinger limped back to Cavor-controlled territory 2 days later. Inside, Vargas and Lee sat in silence in the medbay, bandaged, exhausted, not speaking. They hadn't seen Ray since the shaft, hadn't heard a word. They'd barely made it to the upper extraction tunnel when the blast rocked the mountain under their feet and launched them skyward like ragdolls in a cannon. Vargas woke up in orbit with fractured ribs and a shattered heart. He was gone. And the worst part? He'd planned it all along. At the Cavor Senate, the reaction was split. Half called Ray Holloway a hero, the soldier who saved billions, who ended a war with one final brilliant strike. The other half called him dangerous, unstable, a rogue element that had proven just how unpredictable humanity truly was. Strategist Morcael stood before the council, his face grave. You asked for a weapon. We gave you a man, and now that man has rewritten the rules of warfare. What happens when the next Ray Holloway doesn't agree with our interests? The chamber fell into murmurs. Some senators wanted restrictions. Some wanted tighter control over human operations. Others, smarter ones, wanted full alliance, immediately. They understood what was coming. Because with the fall of the Threxians, a vacuum had formed. And every lesser empire was watching, hungry to claim the power that had just been released into the galaxy. Back on Earth, Ray Holloway's name was everywhere. But the stories weren't the polished hero tales the media wanted. His former squad mates gave interviews that didn't glorify him. They warned people about his calm under pressure, his recklessness, his willingness to die if it meant sending a message. He wasn't trying to be a savior, Vargas said once on a live feed. He just hated bullies, and he wasn't afraid to burn down the house to take them with him. Monuments were proposed, statues approved, history books rewritten. But among the military, Ray Holloway became something else entirely. A lesson, a symbol. The man who proved that humans weren't valuable because of their weapons or ships or numbers, but because they were chaos, controlled only by purpose, and sometimes not even that. 2 weeks after Vel Taraxis, a signal pulsed from deep space, encrypted, human-coded, ancient encryption no longer in use, only one line of text. Tell Vargas she still owes me a drink. Lee nearly choked when he saw it. Vargas went pale, then angry, then hopeful, all in the span of 10 seconds. Where the hell is it coming from? She asked. Edge of uncharted territory, Lee replied, grinning. Looks like someone hitched a ride on a Threxian debris runner. She stared at the blinking coordinates for a long time, then stood. Prep a ship, she said. Lee blinked. You think it's really him? I don't know, she said, jaw tight. But if it is, I'm going to kill him myself. Vargas had never flown this fast in her life. The ship tore through the edge of charted space, past dying stars and radiation belts so intense the hull trembled. Navigation. I screamed warnings every few minutes, but she didn't care. If the coordinates were wrong, she'd burn out the fuel cells trying. If they were right, well, she wasn't sure what she'd do when she saw him. Lee sat beside her, watching her more than the nav feed, You sure you're ready for this? No, Vargas muttered. But he sure as hell is. They found the signal source orbiting a rogue planetoid, a jagged chunk of rock tumbling slowly through the darkness. There were no cities, no ships, no defenses, just a wrecked Threxian transport, half buried in a crater, its emergency beacon still blinking. The human-coded message pulsed once more as they approached. Room service is late. Vargas rolled her eyes. Yup, that's him. They landed on the surface. Atmosphere was thin, barely breathable, just enough to keep a dying man alive. But Ray Holloway wasn't dying. He was sitting on a crate outside the wrecked transport, wearing a patchwork survival suit and gnawing on something that looked like dehydrated meat. He didn't even look up as their ramp lowered. Took you long enough, he said. Vargas didn't say a word. She just walked over, fist clenched, and punched him square in the jaw. He fell backward off the crate, coughing and laughing like a lunatic. I missed you too, he said. You son of a bitch, she shouted. You let us think you were dead. You didn't even leave a message. He stood slowly, brushing off dust. I had to disappear. You know that. If the Threxians or half the galaxy knew I was alive, they'd come hunting. Earth couldn't protect me. Hell, the Cavor couldn't either. Lee stepped out behind her, arms crossed. So you've just been camping out here on Rock for Brains planet while the rest of us picked up the pieces? Ray's smile faded a little. I've been listening, watching. The war's over, yeah, but something else is coming. Vargas narrowed her eyes. What do you mean? He walked over to a storage unit, flipped a cover open, and pulled out a small black device. It buzzed softly, projecting a map of the galaxy. Parts of it were blinking red, systems going dark, new alliances forming, fleets massing in places no one controlled. The Threxians kept the other predators in check, Ray said. With them gone, the real monsters are crawling out of the cracks. He tapped the device. A new symbol appeared. Not Threxian, not Cavor. Something older, something no one had seen before. Vargas stared. Who the hell are they? Ray looked up, serious now. I don't know, but they're watching us. They saw what humans did, what we did. And now? Lee asked. Ray looked between them. Now they want to know if Earth was just lucky, or if we're actually the new threat. Silence settled between them. Then Vargas exhaled slowly. So we're not done. Ray smiled again. Not the cocky, showboating grin. A smaller one. The kind you wear when you know what's coming next won't be easy. But you're ready anyway. No, he said. We're just getting started. Across the galaxy, the Threxian ruins still burned. And in the void left behind, something darker was moving. Watching. Waiting. But now there was one undeniable truth that echoed through every corner of the stars. Humanity had arrived. They didn't ask for permission, and they weren't going away. Not now. Not ever.